April 22, 2006. An elderly Korean War veteran stood at a Carmel grocery store checkout, counting dollar bills and quarters, trying to afford a few basic items. Clint Eastwood was in line behind him. What happened next showed the difference between fame and character. By April 2006, Clint Eastwood was Hollywood royalty. He'd just won 2 Academy Awards for Million Dollar Baby. At 75 years old, he was directing, producing, and acting in some of the most critically acclaimed films of his career. Everywhere he went, people recognized him, wanted autographs, wanted to talk about his movies. But there was one place in Carmel where Clint could be relatively normal. A small neighborhood grocery store on Ocean Avenue that he'd been visiting for 30 years. The staff knew him as the quiet man who always said please and thank you, who helped elderly customers reach items on high shelves, who never acted like he was too important to wait in line like everyone else. On this particular Saturday morning, Clint needed a few things for the weekend. Nothing major, just some basics. He'd thrown on jeans and a simple shirt, a baseball cap pulled low, not to disguise himself because in this store he didn't need to. The manager, a man named Robert Chen who'd been running the place for 20 years, had rung up Clint's groceries dozens of times. He'd nod hello, make small talk about the weather, treat him like any other regular customer. Clint grabbed a basket and walked through the aisles, picking up milk, bread, some coffee, a few other items. The store was quiet at this hour, just a handful of other shoppers. He noticed an elderly man moving slowly through the aisles with a cane, his left hand trembling slightly as he reached for items. The man was wearing an old but clean button-up shirt, and on his chest was a small pin. Clint couldn't see the details from where he stood, but he recognized what it represented: a veteran's pin. Clint continued his shopping, but he found himself noticing the old man in different aisles. The man would pick up an item, look at the price, put it back, pick up something else, study it, sometimes put it in his basket, sometimes return it to the shelf. There was something methodical about it, careful, like every decision mattered. When Clint finished his shopping and headed to the checkout, there was only one lane open. The elderly veteran was there, unloading his basket on the counter. Clint got in line behind him and waited. Robert, the manager, greeted the veteran warmly. "Morning, Mr. Sullivan. How are you today?" "Can't complain, Robert," the old man said, though his voice had that weary quality that suggested he probably could complain if he chose to. "Knees aren't what they used to be, but I'm still here." "That's the spirit," Robert said, starting to ring up his item. Clint watched as the items moved across the counter. A loaf of bread, a small carton of milk, a can of soup, another can of soup, a package of butter, some eggs, the basics. Nothing extra, nothing for pleasure, just what a person needed to survive. When Robert finished scanning everything, he said, "That'll be $11.40, Mr. Sullivan." The old man reached into his pocket and pulled out a worn leather wallet. He opened it and began counting bills. A 5, 4 ones. That's 9. He dug into his pocket and pulled out a handful of change, counting quarters carefully, making small piles on the counter. Then dimes. Then nickels. His hands shook slightly as he counted. Whether from age or nervousness, Clint couldn't tell. Robert waited patiently. He'd seen this before, Clint realized. This wasn't the first time Mr. Sullivan had paid for groceries in exact change. The old man counted carefully, his lips moving as he added up the totals. $10, $10.25, $10.50, $10.75, $11. He kept counting, kept searching his pockets. $11.10, $11.25. He stopped. He recounted. He checked his wallet again, turned his pockets inside out. Empty. "I'm 15 cents short," Mr. Sullivan said quietly. "That's all right," Robert said kindly. "Don't worry about it." "No," the old man said firmly, a note of pride in his voice. "I don't take charity. I'll just put something back." He looked at a small pile of groceries, trying to decide what he could live without. His hand hovered over the eggs, then moved to one of the soup cans. "I don't need 2 cans. One will be enough." Clint, standing behind him, had been taking all of this in. He'd seen the veteran pin on the man's chest. He'd seen the trembling hands. He'd heard the pride in the man's voice when he said he didn't take charity. And he'd seen the resignation in the way Mr. Sullivan reached for the soup can, accepting that he'd have less because that's what his limited resources required. Clint reached forward and gently touched Robert's arm. When Robert looked at him, He shook his head slightly and mouthed silently, "I'll pay." Robert's eyes widened slightly, but he was professional enough not to make a scene. He gave Clint a tiny nod. "Actually, Mr. Sullivan," Robert said smoothly, "I just remembered we have a special on soup today. Buy one, get one free, so this one doesn't count." Mr. Sullivan looked at him suspiciously. "Since when?" "Just started this morning," Robert said. "So you've got 15 cents credit. You want to pick something else? Maybe some coffee? I know you like coffee." The old man's face showed confusion mixed with hope. "You sure about that sale?" "Positive," Robert said, looking him directly in the eye. Mr. Sullivan's shoulders relaxed slightly. "Well, if there's a sale, I suppose I could use some coffee. Haven't had any in weeks." "You go get yourself some coffee. I'll wait right here." The old man made his way slowly back into the store, his cane tapping against the linoleum floor. The moment he was out of earshot, Clint stepped forward. "How much for all of it, including coffee?" Clint asked quietly. "With the coffee, probably around $13, Robert said. Clint pulled out his wallet and handed Robert a $50 bill. "Ring up my stuff separate. Give him his groceries and whatever change is left from the 50. Tell him you miscalculated, or the sale was better than you thought, or whatever makes sense. And Robert, fill a bag. Whatever a man needs for a week of decent meals, add it to my bill." Robert looked at Clint with tears forming in his eyes. "You're a good man, Mr. Eastwood." "He's the good man," Clint said, nodding toward where Mr. Sullivan was slowly making his way back with a small can of coffee. "He served our country. This is nothing compared to what he gave." Mr. Sullivan returned with the coffee and placed it on the counter. Robert added it to the other items in the bag. "All right, Mr. Sullivan, let me recalculate here," Robert said, making a show of adding things up. "With the soup sale and the coffee sale we're running, and I think I miscounted before, your total is actually $11 even. So you've got 40 cents coming back to you." He put 2 quarters in the old man's hand. Mr. Sullivan looked at the coins, then at his bag of groceries, then at Robert. "You sure you got that right?" "Absolutely sure," Robert said firmly. "Well," Mr. Sullivan said, still seeming uncertain but willing to accept this small piece of good fortune. "I appreciate it, Robert. You have yourself a good day." "You too, Mr. Sullivan. You take care now." The old man picked up his bag slowly and made his way toward the door. He was almost there when Clint spoke up. "Excuse me, sir." Mr. Sullivan turned around, noticing Clint for the first time. His eyes widened slightly with recognition. Clint walked over to him. "I couldn't help but notice your pin. You served in Korea?" "Yes, sir," Mr. Sullivan said, standing a little straighter despite the cane. "1st Marine Division, Chosin Reservoir. Spent 3 winters over there before I came home. Lost most of the feeling in my left hand from frostbite, but I made it back, which is more than a lot of men can say." "Thank you for your service," Clint said. And there was something in the way he said it, the sincerity, the weight he gave those words that made them more than just a polite phrase. Mr. Sullivan's eyes got shiny. "That's kind of you to say, son. I know who you are. My granddaughter made me watch Unforgiven, said it was the best Western ever made. I told her she never saw The Searchers, but yours was pretty damn good." Clint smiled. "I'm just a filmmaker. You're a hero." "I'm not a hero," Mr. Sullivan said, shaking his head. "I just did what needed doing. We all did." "That's exactly what makes you a hero," Clint said. "Doing what needs doing, even when it's hard, even when it costs you something." The old man looked down at his trembling left hand, then back at Clint. "Cost a lot of us something, but we were fighting for something worth fighting for. And people like me get to make movies in peace because of people like you," Clint said. "I was in the Army myself, 1950 to 53, right during Korea. Never saw combat, stationed at Fort Ord up the coast, but it gave me an appreciation for what service means." "You served?" Mr. Sullivan asked, surprised. "I didn't know that." "Just got out and went straight into acting," Clint said. "Nothing like what you went through, but I wore the uniform." Mr. Sullivan smiled, a real smile that lit up his weathered face. "Then you understand. You know what it means to put something bigger than yourself first." "I try," Clint said, "though I think I've got a long way to go to measure up to men like you." They talked for a few more minutes, just 2 men who'd worn the uniform, sharing that common experience. Then Mr. Sullivan said he needed to get home before his milk got warm, and Clint helped him to the door. Clint returned to the checkout where Robert had already started ringing up his items, but he'd added things Clint hadn't picked up, Packages of meat, vegetables, bread, soup, coffee, things a person needed for proper meals. "Mr. Sullivan forgot a few things," Robert said with a slight smile. "I'm sure he'll be back for them tomorrow. Maybe you could drop them off on your way home. You live in that direction, don't you?" Clint understood immediately. "I'd be happy to. Can't have a man go without his groceries." The total came to considerably more than Clint's original items. He paid without question, loading 2 full bags into his arms. As Clint was leaving, Robert called out, "You know, I've been in retail for 20 years, seen all kinds of people. Rich folks from Pebble Beach, celebrities, regular working people. And I can tell you what makes a person good has nothing to do with how many Oscars they have or how famous they are. It's what they do when nobody's watching." "Except you were watching," Clint said with that slight Eastwood smile. "Maybe so," Robert said, "but you didn't know that when you offered to pay. You did it because it was right, not because anyone would know." After Clint left, Robert turned to the next customer in line, a woman who'd witnessed the entire exchange. The woman had tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry," the woman said. "I'm crying like a fool, but what he just did, that was the most beautiful thing I've seen in a long time." "It was pretty special," Robert agreed. The woman reached into her purse and pulled out a $20 bill. "I want to put this toward Mr. Sullivan's groceries next time he comes in. If that man can be that generous, the least I can do is help too." Another customer who'd been watching stepped forward. "Put me down for 20 too." By the time the store closed that night, Robert had collected nearly $200 from customers who'd witnessed Clint's quiet act of generosity and wanted to do something themselves. He started a fund for Mr. Sullivan and a few other regulars who he knew struggled to make ends meet. Clint never knew about the fund his actions inspired. He never told anyone about paying for Mr. Sullivan's groceries. When reporters would ask him about charitable acts, he'd talk about official donations to hospitals and schools, but he never mentioned the small personal moments like this one. But those who'd witnessed it that April morning never forgot. They told their families, their friends. The story spread quietly through Carmel, not as gossip, but as inspiration. It became a reminder that kindness doesn't have to be loud or public to be powerful. Mr. Sullivan never knew who really paid for his groceries that day. He believed in the soup sale and the fortunate miscalculation, believed in his own small piece of good luck. And maybe that was the most respectful part of what Clint did, letting the old veteran keep his dignity, never making him feel like charity, just giving him what he'd earned through his service, even if the pension didn't quite cover it. Years later, when the story of that morning in the grocery store emerged, it was one of dozens that came out about Clint. People who'd witnessed small moments of generosity, times when Clint had helped someone quietly, without fanfare, without expecting recognition. The grocery store story was just one thread in a larger tapestry of a man who understood that success gave him resources, and resources gave him responsibility. Robert, the store manager, was interviewed once about that morning. He was asked why he thought Clint had done it. "He saw a man who'd given everything for his country," Robert said simply. "A man who'd literally lost the feeling in his hand on a frozen Korean battlefield so people like Clint could live free. And Clint understood that no amount of fame, no Oscar, no box office success could ever repay that debt. So he did what he could in that moment. He made sure a veteran could eat decent meals for a week, not as charity, not as publicity, just as one man honoring another man's service."